Geeky Christian posted a list of questions they have for atheists. Apparently they are appropriate from Geisler's book, Conversational Evangelism. I don't have a copy of that book, so I don't know if they were taken verbatim or modified by Geeky Christian. Anyway, they have questions for several groups, and since I am both an atheist and an agnostic, I figured I'd answer the questions in those sections. Are you absolutely sure there is no God? If not, then is it not possible there is a God? And if it is possible that God exists, then can you think of any reason that would keep you from wanting to look at the evidence? I am not completely sure. I admit that I could be wrong. That's why I've looked at so-called evidence. But all the evidence that has been presented to me is either wordplay, misunderstandings of current theories, or arguments from ignorance. If there is proof that a God exists, then that data would have to be taken into account for the nature of the universe. But since there isn't any evidence, there is no reason to assume a creator exists. Would you agree that intelligently designed things call for an intelligent designer of them? If so, then would you agree that evidence for intelligent design in the universe would be evidence for a designer of the universe? Yes, I will agree that intelligently designed things are designed by an intelligence. That's simply a tautology. But there is no evidence for intelligent design of the universe. We don't know how the universe was formed, and we have no reason to assume it was created by an intelligence. As for life, the usual suspect when it comes to claims for intelligent design, the diversity is explained by random mutations and trial and error. In regards to the beginning of life, we have several hypotheses on how it could have arisen, all with naturalistic explanations and no intelligent designer necessary. Would you agree that nothing cannot produce something? If so, then if the universe did not exist but came to exist, wouldn't this be evidence for a cause beyond the universe? Lawrence Krauss has brought up some interesting ideas and shown how particles can and do come into existence from nothing. So yes, in theory, nothing can produce something. And if there is a cause beyond the universe, there is no reason to think it is an intelligence of any kind, so fitting a divine being into that role is presumptuous. Until evidence for an intelligent creator can be found, there is no reason to assume one exists. Would you agree with me that just because we cannot see something with our eyes, such as our mind, gravity, magnetism, the wind, that does not mean it doesn't exist? Yes, there are many things we can't see with our eyes. However, they can either be observed with other means, or we can observe their actions on other objects. For example, we cannot see the electromagnetic force, but if you want to observe its effects, stick a fork into a wall outlet. You may not see the force, but you'll definitely feel it. Warning, this channel does not promote the idea of sticking anything except proper devices into electrical sockets. Would you also agree that just because we cannot see God with our eyes does not necessarily mean He does not exist? I will agree with that. But the fact that God cannot be observed or shown to exist in any way at all means there is no evidence for its existence, and so we have no reason to assume one exists. Just because something cannot be shown does not mean it doesn't exist. However, without any evidence that something exists, there is no reason to assume it does. In the light of the Big Bang evidence for the origin of the universe, is it more reasonable to believe that no one created something out of nothing, or someone created something out of nothing? Yes, there could be and probably is a cause for the Big Bang, but since we have no evidence that intelligence was the driving force behind it, there is no reason to say there was any kind of intelligent creator behind the origin of the Big Bang. Would you agree that something presently exists? If something presently exists, and something cannot come from nothing, then would you also agree that something must have always existed? Well, as noted before, there is work being shown that sometimes something can come from nothing. So just because something exists now does not mean it necessarily always existed. And, while I keep repeating this over and over again, just because something exists, that does not mean that something was created by any kind of intelligence. If it takes an intelligent being to produce an encyclopedia, then would it not also take an intelligent being to produce the equivalent of 1,000 sets of encyclopedia full of information in the first one-celled animal? Even atheists such as Richard Dawkins acknowledges that amoeba have as much information in their DNA as 1,000 Encyclopedia Britannicas. Richard Dawkins, the blind watchmaker. This is another misunderstanding. Yes, the DNA strand has a multitude of combinations, made up of adenine, cytosine, guanine, and thymine. But that is not a readable code like an encyclopedia, but a natural outcome like other biological processes forged through evolution. And current amoeba and other modern-day single-cell organisms were not the first creatures. They have had billions of years of evolution to become as complex as they are now. The first self-replicating molecules would have been much simpler, and only as they became more complex did DNA develop to assist with their reproduction. And after those billions of years, it is not surprising that DNA has become so complex. If an effect cannot be greater than its cause, since you can't give what you do not have to give, then does it not make more sense that mind produced matter than that matter produced mind, as atheists say? Well, first off, that's wordplay. What does greater mean in this context? Evolution has shown that complex creatures can come from simpler ones. Gravity and dust can create planets. Cold temperatures, particles, and moisture in the air can create greatly complex crystalline forms, known as snowflakes. As for the mind versus matter argument, our minds are the current result of billions of years of trial and error through mutations and survival. Our minds are the result of a collection of matter that helps us survive, and can be explained through naturalistic accounts, so there is no need for a greater mind to create ours. Is there anything wrong anywhere? If so, how can we know unless there is a moral law? There are actions that I believe are wrong, but I came to my conclusions as to what is right and wrong through the idea of harm. Does an action cause harm to others? And if it does, can it be mitigated by the good it does? That is my criteria for whether an action is wrong. I don't need an external force to decide what is moral. If every law needs a lawgiver, does it not make sense to say a moral law needs a moral lawgiver? No, morals came about naturally. We evolved a sense of community because our ancestors thrived when they worked with others, so our morality evolved from the need to cooperate with those others. The ones who were able to be moral and work together thrived, while those who could not were not accepted by the community, so they had less of a chance to survive. It happens naturalistically without the need of a moral lawgiver. Would you agree that if it took intelligence to make a model universe in a science lab, then it took superintelligence to make the real universe? No, just because something can be created one way does not mean this is the only way it could be created. For example, I can create water in a lab by combining water and hydrogen with a spark or flame, but it can also be done naturally as well. Lab work shows how things can be created by naturalistic processes, since we do not have supernatural powers of our own. Would you agree that it takes a cause to make a small glass ball found in the woods? And would you agree that making the ball larger does not eliminate the need for a cause? If so, then doesn't the biggest ball of all, the whole universe, need a cause? Are you suggesting the universe is a glass ball? We know that glass can form through naturalistic reasons, and we know there are other natural processes, like erosion, that could shape it into a sphere. But if we found one, we'd probably not assume that was the cause of this glass bauble, because we have evidence that people exist, and that people create similar structures. So, if we found a glass ball, the most likely explanation is that it was created by a person. But, to take that to the universe example, we don't know how universes are formed, or have any evidence of any intelligent being that creates them, so we can't honestly come to the conclusion that it was caused by an intelligence. If there is a cause beyond the whole finite, limited universe, would not this cause have to be beyond the finite, namely non-finite or infinite? No, it wouldn't have to be. We don't know enough about the creation of the universe to assume anything about the cause of its creation, let alone the cause has to be infinite. You need to show some evidence regarding the creation of the universe before you can make any assumptions as to the properties of any creation. In light of the anthropic principle, that the universe was fine-tuned for the emergence of life from its very inception, wouldn't it make sense to say there was an intelligent being who pre-planned human life? Again, we don't know enough about the creation of the universe to make any assumptions as to its purpose. We cannot say it was fine-tuned for the emergence of life, and we don't know enough to say that this is the only type of life that could exist. Only that the universe is set up the way it is, and our life developed within this universe. There could be multiple universes, and only the ones that life could emerge in could have life. Or maybe the constants of the universe is set in such a way they have to be the way they are. In any case, nothing points to an intelligent creator. All we know is this is the way the universe is. Of the two possible kinds of agnostic, which kind are you? Strong agnostic, who says we can't know anything for sure, or weak agnostic, who says we don't know anything for sure, but we could if we had enough evidence? I would have to say, in general, I'm a weak agnostic in regards to an intelligent creator being. We have no evidence for one, so no reason to believe in one. But, in a way, I could also be considered a slightly hard agnostic. For example, I can't be sure that I am not a brain in a jar, and everything I experience is simulation. I have no evidence or reason to believe it, and there is zero support for it, but I honestly can't disprove it either. If you are the strong kind, then how do you know for sure that you can't know anything for sure? Because I admit that I could be wrong about everything, even what I experience. As I said, I could actually be living in a reality that does not conform to the laws of physics as we know them, and what I experience is just a simulation. There is absolutely no evidence for this, so I discount it, but, like claims of the divine, there is still a possibility, no matter how far-fetched. If you are the weak kind of agnostic, then is it not possible that we could know for sure that God exists, if we had enough evidence? Yes, if we had compelling evidence, then we could know if a God exists. But, as I've said many times, so far we don't have any good evidence for a God. So there is no reason for me to believe that there is one at all. Do you agree that an open-minded person should be willing to look at all the evidence? If so, then are you willing to look at the evidence for God's existence? Yes, and when actual evidence, something that is testable and repeatable, is brought to my attention, then I will have to adjust my position on the existence of gods. But until then, I will retain my skepticism. So, there are my answers. If anybody out there comes across something they think I should go over, or just have questions in general, send them my way.
Adenine, cytosine, guanine, and thionine might make up my DNA, but my love gene must be missing from its station.